Welcome in to the Tuesday edition of the 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Blake Lovell with me, Barry Allen with me, as we will talk basketball and baseball today around the Southeastern Conference. Let's start with basketball. Of course, the most important thing that happened overnight was Arkansas bowing out to Baylor in the NCAA tournament. Blake, I watched that game, and I watched Arkansas struggle, and I didn't feel like Arkansas was in a spot where the moment was too big. I just felt like they ran into a team. It's almost like watching Alabama play football when they get into the BCS championship or something and they're playing a good team. And you know they're playing a good team, but Alabama's just better. I felt like watching Baylor and Arkansas last night. That's the sense I got. I thought Arkansas really struggled to get into its offense early, all the hands everywhere, the quickness. Baylor just didn't give them a lot. Arkansas, I thought, played well, closed late, and of course, doing it without your best player playing well is always a tough road to hoe in the NCAA tournament. Moses Moody was 2 of 10 from the field last night, but I just thought, to put it simply, no shame in the effort for Arkansas. Baylor was just too much.
Yeah, I mean, and we had joked about Arkansas and kind of just getting down double digits, and that's when you knew they were going to win. But you can't do that against a team like Baylor. It just doesn't work. You can't get down 29-11 midway through the first half and feel like you're going to have a great chance of coming back, which they did. I mean, they battled back and made it close. But again, I just don't think you ever put yourself in a situation where you felt like you were really going to capitalize on such a bad start. And again, I don't even know if it was really just a bad start. Like, it's just Baylor's just so good. And they just did everything right, in that first. I mean, again, like they put up 30 points 10 minutes into the game. So just kind of one of those things where they're just so good, and they're the Baylor team that we've seen all season. I know after they had the 3-week layoff or whatever it was, people weren't sure, and they really weren't. I mean, they didn't play as well as they did before that. But now they've kind of gotten back into that same form that they had before that pause. And they're right there, I think, on Gonzaga's level. And so, yeah, it was just one of those where if you're Arkansas, you just couldn't afford to get down like you have in these other games, because it was going to take a masterful performance to be able to overcome a deficit like that early. And, yeah, Arkansas just never could.
Barry, I think we talked pre-podcast. There just never was the feeling that Arkansas had the guns to do this thing as you watched it.
Now, you're just kind of watching the game, and it's just, they get down early, they make a run. Baylor goes back, they make it a, competitive game by halftime, and I think they're down 6 in the second half. Notae fouls out with like 14 minutes to go. He's never really felt like that Arkansas was going to win. I mean, he's like, well, maybe they'll, keep it under double digits, have a chance maybe at the end, but just there's never really a feeling at me watching the game, that I thought Arkansas was ever going to win the game. And that's not a knock on Arkansas. This Baylor's, really good and has played well all year and played well in the tournament. So not really anything for me that I was watching last night that I thought, wow, this, Arkansas's got a shot here. It's kind of like Baylor just kind of pushed their arms out and just kind of held them at arm's length pretty much the entire game.
Blake, one thing that stood out to me, my goodness, I don't know that I've ever seen, at least recently, a combination of players who are just so physically put together and yet so quick and athletic. I mean, some of these kids on Baylor's team look like they're linebackers, but they move like they're cornerbacks. I just thought if you want to look for something across the board where I thought Baylor had the edge, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, and they're just Scott Drew's teams have always been pretty physical. I mean, they've played an aggressive style. The very good rebounding team, usually defensive team. They've had all those things before, but like this team is just built, not just from a skill standpoint, but like you said, from a physical standpoint. Unlike many other teams he's had there, they just have the strength, the athleticism. I mean, even the guards. I mean, we look at guys like Maceo Teague and Jared Butler, and just guys like that, and how they're built and how they play. They are very impressive, and I keep going back to it, but it is so crazy to think that Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell, started at Alabama and Auburn, and here they are in the Final Four now with Baylor, and just how good players they are. And we could play the what-if game forever, but just imagine those two guys on those two respective rosters this season and what that would look like for them. But yeah, they're just, I mean, again, Baylor and Gonzaga, I think, are two teams that just have a gear that no one else has, and they just have a skill set that there's just no other teams have. And I think Gonzaga and USC will be interesting, but my goodness, like Baylor, they just look like a team that they can just overwhelm you so quickly, and we saw that here just in terms of how they got off to the start that they did, and Arkansas just could not match it. So
I was on a text with a couple of buddies of mine. They're watching the game, and one of them in the middle of the game just says, let's just get on with it. Give us Baylor and Gonzaga. That's the game we want. And no offense to Arkansas, but I think there's something to that. These are two almost super teams in my mind.
Well, and that's why I'm very curious to see this Gonzaga USC game, because I don't know, like I just get a sense that this is going to be an interesting game, and because we talk about teams that have the size and sort of physicality. I mean, I think USC is one of those teams that can take that to Gonzaga. But still, I mean, we've said it all year long, and that's why I think for people that jumped off the Baylor bandwagon for whatever reason, since they just kind of had some ups and downs after that pause. But we have to remember they're 26-2, and they're still a team that at their best. Going into the season, I was probably one of the few. Well, I mean, there were some people that did, but like I had Baylor as my preseason number one. I had Gonzaga at number two, and I know a lot of people talked about that. Trying to make that decision, which team do you pick? Now, certainly, if you look at it overall, I think the Zags were probably the right choice, but like I think you could have made the argument now. I mean, like Baylor is good enough. You just watch how Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell play, and like these two guys, I mean, they're as guards, like they're two of the better guards we've seen in college basketball, like in recent years. I think just in terms of their style of play and how they do what they do. Like Davion Mitchell, I have never seen someone did you see how many times in this game where he just had the ball and he took one step and he's like at the rim? Like it's just so quick and just, my goodness, like that's just something you cannot teach. And yeah, these guys are just, they're so talented, and I would love to see the Baylor Gonzaga matchup.
Yeah, and let's not sell Houston short. That's a team that really gets after you on the offensive glass and defends. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say Baylor walks into the championship game. I think we think those are the best two teams, but I think that one's going to be a dandy to watch too.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a physical game, and like you said, rebounding will be a big part of that one. But I don't know. I think Baylor offensively, just, man, that they can be really good at times. And I think because if we think about it too, like they went 8 of 15 from three in this game. That's obviously pretty good. When you look back, like they didn't shoot it well against Villanova. You go back to the game against Wisconsin, they shot it pretty well. I mean, 8 of 17, but this is just, it's a team that just can beat you in so many different ways, whether it's making the three, the rebounding we talked about, they're quick enough to get steals, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're the total package.
You mentioned Davion Mitchell. How much fun would that have been to watch him and Sharif Cooper in the backcourt this year?
My
Auburn, and that
goodness.
held together.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm telling you, that guy, like I'm just wowed every time I watch Davion Mitchell play, because again, it's just, he can have the ball 25 feet away from the rim, and he takes two dribbles, and he's there, and like he's laying it up. And it's just, it's just like he's gliding. It's almost like you see someone that's just on skates. Like he just glides and finds himself in the right position where his body's just right where it needs to be to have the perfect shot at a layup or something like that. And it's just, yeah, we saw that right in the game where he got in foul trouble, and it was a different game once he went out. Arkansas was able to kind of rally from that big deficit early, and they made it a game because he wasn't on the floor, and he just does so many different things. And I think people would argue, who's the most important player on that team? I mean, is it Davion Mitchell? Is it Jared Butler? It's an argument that ultimately doesn't mean a whole lot, but still, like you can make the argument it is Davion Mitchell, just in terms of how he plays, what he does offensively, defensively, and just the speed. My goodness, the speed that guy has is just unreal.
Okay, I love the way that Arkansas plays, and just that we're not afraid of anybody mentality, and they do what they do, and they don't really change their style for anybody. But having said that, last night with about 14 minutes left, JD Notae gets his fourth foul, and the announcers are talking about, do you take him out? They leave him in, and sure enough, not even 10 seconds later, he gets the ball and commits a charging foul. That's one that I think you might want to do over on if you're Eric Musselman. Maybe leave him in the game. I don't think I would have, but I think that a lot of times the fouling thing, taking guys out with too many fouls, to me becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, we're afraid we're not going to have him, and we take him out, and we lose the playing time right there, if that makes sense. But I don't know that giving him the ball and having him take it to the hole right away was the best idea either, because I think that once he fouls out, look, again, they've shortened the bench. Vanover's not a factor in that game last night because of style of play, which I get. But he's the key to what they do, and I think that that's one of those things that was a moment where once that happened, it was going to be incredibly tough for Arkansas to win that game.
Yeah, and I think it's just, one of those where, I mean, look at the production he had. Where he had 14 points in 15 minutes, like in that game, and tied for their leading scorer, and he was. I mean, he was kind of one of those guys, which we've said it so many times. He's been someone that's kind of pushed them a lot in a lot of these games when they've had to make comebacks. Like, he's been one of the guys that sparked it for sure. But yeah, it was. I'm surprised Arkansas honestly hang around and made as close of a game they did with him out, as long as he was out in the second half. Because I thought after he fouled out, I was thinking, oh boy, this thing could get a little bit ugly. But they didn't let that happen. So you got to give them credit. I mean, other guys stepped up. But yeah, it goes back to what we said. You can't spot a team like Baylor as many points as they did in terms of getting down, 18 that quickly. You can't do that. It may have worked, like we said, against Colgate, Oral Roberts, teams like that, but it just wasn't going to work against Baylor.
Next year for Arkansas, I think everybody expects Moody to hit the draft. Jalen Tate, Justin Smith, they're seniors. Those guys were huge additions for them. But a lot of guys, presumably Notae would come back as a senior, you would think. Devontae Davis would be back as a sophomore, you would think. Desi Sills would be a senior if you advance everybody a year. This is assuming everybody doesn't take their COVID year. Vanover's got a couple years left. Jalen Williams, who played 15, 16 minutes last night, would be back too. I still think they've got the foundation for a pretty good team. What do you think the outlook is for them next year?
I think we have no idea, because we know the one wild card is, Musselman's going to bring in 3 transfers. I mean, so I don't even think we know how to even project Arkansas next year. Like, they're kind of in the Alabama range to where I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they'll be right up there in the top of the SEC standings. But as terms of what the roster is going to look like, it's just with Muss, you never know, because he's going to go out and get 3 probably pretty talented guys or more, maybe just based on what they're going to have. But yeah, if they keep the younger guys that aren't factored into the draft, I mean, they're going to have a good nucleus. There's no doubt about it. And then I think it'll just be doing what he always does, and that's building, around those guys with very experienced, talented grad transfers, guys like that. I mean, maybe not even grad transfers based on the transfer situation. He'll just go out and get guys. I mean, he, as we've said so many times, like, he literally does his homework on pretty much every guy, I think, that enters the transfer portal. And that's why they've had so much success. Their staff just does it masterfully at this point, in how they work the transfer portal. They don't let anything, no stone unturned for them. They take a look at everyone that hits that portal. It doesn't matter that it's hundreds of guys. They want to find the guys that are the right fit for them. And I have no doubt that they've hit a lot of home runs doing that before, and I have no doubt that they'll keep doing that. So.
Speaking of home runs in the transfer portal, Kentucky sure hit one yesterday.
They did. Keldon Grady, who just was a star at Davidson. You can actually think back to several years ago when Kentucky and Davidson played in the NCAA tournament. He is a big one. This guy can score. He can shoot. And I saw a lot of people point one thing out in that, okay, we say this a lot with all these Kentucky guys that have come in as transfers and said, well, we thought this guy was going to be great, or this guy was going to be the tipping point for them. But here's the thing. I don't think that they've had a guy like this, because to me, this is a guy that fits exactly one of their biggest issues they've had. Whereas, and this does not take anything away from Reed Travis or Nate Sestina or any of those guys. Olivier Sarr, like that's not it. Like those are guys who help them in a lot of areas. But as we've said so many times, the one problem Kentucky has consistently had, and we had this discussion a week or so ago on the podcast, they just have not had that guy that can just knock down threes at a very consistent rate. And feel like someone that can just completely change a game with 2 or 3 threes in the span of a minute. Well, now they've got that guy. I think Kellen Grady, if you just look at it overall, I think he shot 38% from three for his career. At Davidson, playing for Bob McKillop offensively, this guy's he knows how things work offensively because that's a guy who knows how to coach offense. He looked back to last year, I think he had a 32-point game, a lot of 20-point games. He's just had a lot of those throughout his career, and I find it hard to believe that he will not fit in very well there. I don't think this is a guy that's just going to all of a sudden come in and, play 10 minutes a game next year or anything like that. I think he's going to come in and be fantastic for them because he adds that shooting element. Again, we know Cal's going to bring some other guys in too, but I could be wrong. I just feel like this is exactly what Kentucky needed, to have a guy who hasn't just proven for one season that he can shoot it. He's proven it for 4 seasons that he's a very consistent three-point shooter overall. Now, sure, he's had some bad games along the way and probably had some stretches where he didn't shoot particularly well, but he's a shooter. And I think his scoring ability, his shooting ability, that's exactly what Kentucky needed. So I think that's a huge pickup for them.
Yeah, I mean, how many times on the podcast have we said, boy, what Kentucky really lacks is a shooter?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many times, and I think that's what we said. We tried to go back down the line. We're thinking, okay, I mean, Tyler Hero, he's pretty good, but, like, aside from that, we're just thinking back, like, where are these great shooters? And, like, statistically, you see that with him. Like, he is just someone that has just done such a really good job of making three-pointers and doing it at a pretty high rate. So, yeah, I think I would be really surprised if he's not someone that's, averaging double figures next year for Kentucky, because it's not too – he played in the A-10, he played at Davidson. That's a program we know that is you can learn a lot there, and you can be a pretty successful player playing at Davidson. So he's not coming up from a very low major conference or anything like that, and you wonder how the fit's going to be. He played, against some good competition at Davidson, and I think he's someone that, given the right, and we say this, given the right talent around him, which we have no doubt probably that Kentucky's going to have, he's got the experience, he's got all the things, and I think just as long as they build around him with what they want to do offensively, they have a guy they can go to now and say, all right, if we need some threes, we want to get someone hot, like from outside, we finally feel like we have that knockdown shooter that we've needed. So.
Yeah, you said double-digit scoring. I think that's almost a given his skill set and Kentucky's need. But, Blake, anything else basketball-related before we shift to baseball?
No, I mean, it's just it should be interesting, like you said, the rest of the tournament. And yeah, this is where, we talk about the transfers. This is where things really start to get interesting, I think, in terms of, there's a lot of guys out there. And we talked about Xavier Pinson and different guys like that could, wind up at SEC schools, even though he's an SEC transfer. I just think that's the biggest part now. Now we start to look at, okay, who are going to be the guys that you go out, you identify to build your roster for next season. We already had a pretty good idea of what the freshman classes are going to look like, but there's no way of knowing, kind of what these rosters are going to look like if we start to look ahead, just because, transfers can change everything. And I feel like this is going to be a very active transfer season for a lot of SEC teams, just because we know that's kind of the nature of the game at this point. And, that should be interesting to see how that plays out. Coaching news, I think you still kind of look around. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe there's some assistance still. Jordan Mincy from Florida just took the Jacksonville job. And, those are things you keep an eye on. But really, I think the transfers is where things start to heat up at this point.
All right, Barry Allen, let's talk baseball. It's going to be interesting every weekend, but I thought it was particularly astonishing. Not that we didn't think Arkansas was a good team, but I think you and I both talked about it last week. We felt Mississippi State was a better team than Arkansas heading into last week, and I don't think that was unreasonable given the things we saw. But, man, Arkansas goes into Starksville and sweeps the Hogs. I don't think any of us saw that one coming.
No, I certainly don't think so. But I do think Arkansas is a really, really good team. And, they're back number 1 in the RPI this morning. 5-1 start in the league, home series win over Alabama, who, when they went into the series, was really playing really well. Not so much since they left Fayetteville, but, home series win over Alabama after getting drubbed the first night 16-1, and now they've bounced back and won 7 in a row, getting ready for this weekend series against Auburn. But top to bottom in their lineup is really good. I mean, they hit a lot of home runs. Christian Franklin, Matt Goodhart, Brady Slavens, Robert Moore. I mean, these guys can hit. Battles and Moore are slick as glass up the middle. I mean, they are a really good double play combination. And just looking at them, I've not seen every team play, but watching Arkansas play, you got Opitz at catcher, Battles at short, Moore at second, and Franklin in center field. Who's better than those 4 guys? I mean, what SEC team has 4 better up the middle defensive guys than those 4 guys? I don't know that there's anybody out there that can play with those 4 on a consistent basis. And they, their starting pitching is good enough, and their bullpen this weekend was tremendous. And they outpitched Mississippi State in every game, and certainly outhit them. I mean, they hit 9 home runs and just dominated Mississippi State on the road.
Yeah, in terms of the up the middle defense, Georgia, of course, is one of the top fielding teams in the league. I've not seen the Bulldogs enough to know. Of course, I watch Vanderbilt. They're really good up the middle. I think C.J. Rodriguez has had a great year behind the plate. Carter Young is tremendous at shortstop. They've got Bradfield in center, who's probably the fastest guy in the league, and he's made some plays. No, their question will be at second, where Tate Colwick was really good, but now he's hurt, going to be out for a while. I think they have a downgrade with Parker Nolan, but I'm glad you bring that up. There's some really good defensive teams in the league this year, and certainly Arkansas, like you said, if not at the top of the conversation, certainly very near it.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, those, you just, like in the key situations last weekend, Mississippi State's making a run. They hit back-to-back homers in the 6th and get it to 5-4. And you see, well, okay, here they go. They're about to make their run. Pitcher needs to make a pitch, gets a ground ball, got 2 double plays late in the game, 1 in the 9th. I mean, they just walked a guy, and then Rowdy Jordan's ahead in the count 1-0, and he rolls over on a pitch. A tailor-made 2-hopper right to Moore at second base, and he goes to Battles, and then they throw on to first to complete the double play, and basically sucked all the life out of the building when they did that. And it just makes it hard to, you get those, when you got good defensive teams, it just makes it really, really hard to, teams that don't make a bunch of errors and give you a lot of free bases. It just makes it hard to beat those teams. But yeah, there's a lot of really good defensive teams. I mean, I've seen Bradfield. I mean, you joke about people being fast, but I think he literally could turn off the light and be into bed before it got dark. I mean, he is really fast and really good center fielder. Has made some really good plays. And there's a lot of good defenders in this league. A lot of teams, play really, really good defense. But Arkansas now leading the league, at 984 fielding. They've only made 13 errors. Georgia, Vanderbilt both at 979, and Auburn at 978. I mean, we got over half the league fielding over 976. So I mean, there've been some pretty good defense in this league, and Arkansas's turned, along with Auburn, 20 double plays, and Vanderbilt leads the league with 21. So a lot of good defense.
Well, I look at the series score. State scores 11 runs, gives up 25. It wasn't just a sweep. It was the margin of victory that's incredible. Again, I don't think either of us saw this coming. For Mississippi State, was this just a bad weekend and a bad matchup, or were these maybe indicative of cracks that were there that were revealed by playing an elite team? Now, I tend to think State is still an Omaha-level team. I mean, you look at the pitching, they've struck out, 315 guys in 215 innings. I will take my chances with that any day, but I know you got to watch more of that than I did. What did you come away thinking about Mississippi State after that series?
Well, actually, State led in 2 of the 3 games, and then Arkansas just came back. I mean, it seems to me like Arkansas might have a little more power, than Mississippi State. Hit 9 home runs, and a lot of them solos. I think every home run they hit. I know Friday night, the 4 they hit were solos, and I think 8 of the 9 home runs they hit were solo home runs in the series. But just the balance up and down the lineup, it just didn't look to me like Mississippi State had the same kind of balance 1 through 9 that Arkansas did. and I just thought Arkansas outpitched them this weekend. Four-game losing streak for Mississippi State. In the last three SEC games, they gave up 8 to LSU in the series finale, and they gave up quite a few runs to Arkansas, 25 to Arkansas. So what's that? 33 runs they've allowed in their last 4 SEC games. Maybe they are playing better teams. Maybe the teams they played were not as strong. LSU's probably not as strong an offensive club as we maybe thought. So maybe they're getting tested a little bit on the mound with better offensive teams. We'll see what they do this weekend when they play Kentucky, who is really good on the road this week. But I still think Mississippi State's really good. I still think at some point this season, they're going to be ranked probably number 1 in one of the polls. And I certainly think that they can host a super regional and have a chance to go to Omaha. I'm not ready to bury them just because they lost 3 straight to Arkansas and 4 in a row overall in the league. So I still think they're one of the elite teams in this league.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think sometimes teams just have a bad spell. I suspect that's what the issue is with State right now, but we'll see. Barry, a couple more sweeps I want to get into that were surprising. Maybe not completely shocking because the home teams swept both times, but South Carolina had been slumping. Florida had been playing better. The Gamecocks sweep that one at Columbia, and Tennessee, which has had fits with LSU, gets a sweep of the Tigers in Knoxville. Let's start with South Carolina. I watched that team against Vanderbilt last week. I felt like they had a good team. They just ran into a pitching buzzsaw there, and sure enough, they got it right against Florida. I think there's some implications for the Gators there too, because that's not shaping up as the team we thought we would see heading into the year. But let's start with the Gamecocks in Florida. What were your impressions of that series, Barry?
Well, first of all, just South Carolina winning the series, something they had not done against the Gators since 2011, and then winning a series against the Gators at home for the first time since 2008. So they finally got the Gator off their back, and then, after the dramatic win Friday night where they had to come back twice and then win with a rally in the 14th inning that lasted 5.5 hours. Eister hit a game-tying homer, and then Burgess had the double to right center to win the game. You could just kind of see how the momentum of that series changed in that 1/2 inning as South Carolina goes, hey, we can win this thing. We can play with these guys now. And Florida's like, they're better than what they've been in the last couple of years. And then they dominated them on the mound Saturday and Sunday. I mean, just dominated them. And they finally got Wes Clark going. I mean, he hits a 3-run homer Saturday in the game that wins the game on Saturday to break his 0-for-16 slump to start SEC play. So go figure that. But that's what Rocker and Leiter on Schultz will do for you for Vanderbilt. And then, he hits another home run Sunday, starts a 3-home run inning on Sunday where he and Eister go back to back. And then Brady Allen adds a 3rd homer in the inning. And the wind's blowing out on Sunday, and Florida hit some home runs as well. But you could just kind of see that, at least in those 3 games, that's the South Carolina we're used to seeing. Pitching, defense, and hitting the ball out of the park. And that's what they did. And they got the sweep over the Gators and, got that, like I said, got the Gator off their back finally. And now they got a, trip to Georgia this weekend to see, if they can keep it rolling. But, even losing the first 2 games to Vanderbilt last week, for them to bounce back Sunday, they'd lost 3 at Texas and 2 at Vanderbilt and had a 7-game losing streak and, didn't have a base runner Sunday and then get back-to-back homers and then somehow won the game at Vandy, won the midweek game, now sweeps Florida. Now they're one of the hottest teams in the league and going to Georgia this weekend in SEC play.
Let's talk about the Gators. I put up a power poll on Monday. I have Florida 7th, and I don't think that's unfair right now. Now, we expected a lot better of the Gators, and I'm not going to rule out that they couldn't even win the SEC, right? I mean, a lot of times you'll have an elite team that will struggle a little bit, and certainly Kevin O'Sullivan has got as good a track record as any coach in this league in terms of getting it together. But we've seen their bullpen collapse at times. Hunter Barco is not having anything close to the season we thought he would have. Leftwich and Mace have been good, but I don't know, man. This team has not, when it has played top competition, fared so well so far, and it makes me wonder about the Gators, to be honest.
Yeah, They've been like a yo-yo this year. They're up and down. It's really head scratching to see, okay, what's going on with Florida? What's the deal with them? They've blown some games that they led. One thing, Florida's 1-4 in one-run games. They have more one-run losses than any team in this league, and they're 0-3 in extra innings. And so that's one thing. They're not winning the close games, which is something that you expect Florida to do in the course of a season, is to win the close games. Another thing, this past weekend in particular, Judd Fabian, he's 0 for 13. He struck out 11 times in the series. Now, he walked a couple of times and he scored a run, but your SEC player of the year type candidate cannot go 0 for 13 and punch out 11 times in a series against anybody in this league, especially on the road against one of the better teams. And Young, who started off hot, has kind of cooled off a little bit. I think the freshman, really got after A&M the week before, but then this week, not quite as good on the road against South Carolina pitching. Although Hickey hit a home run on Sunday, but Gachette and, Halter didn't have quite the series that they did. They combined for 17 hits the first week, nowhere near that this week. And that's understandable with freshmen. They're going to take some lumps in this league as well. But, Florida got to figure it out somehow. They didn't get good pitching Saturday from Leftwich. He hit six guys, one shy of the NCAA record. It's not in the SEC record book. I guess we don't keep futility stats like that. And Florida didn't have a record either, but I got to imagine that was a Florida and an SEC record if the NCAA record is only 7. And, Florida the first night, 14 innings, only had 9 hits. South Carolina walked 14 guys and made 2 errors, and Florida still couldn't win. So just an inconsistent team for me for Florida. Just, they play really good, and then they play bad, and then they play really good, and then they play really bad again. And, now they go home and they got Ole Miss coming in this weekend, and that's going to be tough for them as well.
Yeah, I didn't see that game, but judging from Twitter, that Friday night game got a little bit chippy.
It did. It was actually kind of neat. The SEC network, once the A&M and Georgia game went off, they kind of went like Final Four crazy on us, and we started getting games. They just went, they went to Vanderbilt and showed Vanderbilt, Missouri. We saw Leiter get through the 6th and the 7th, and then we saw the 8th inning, and we saw the base hit that Missouri busted up the no-hitter in the 9th inning, and they sent us to Auburn and Kentucky, and they sent us to South Carolina and Florida, and actually got to watch like the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th inning at the South Carolina-Florida game, and there were some instances in that game where, umpires had to kind of get in the way and kind of get some guys back off of each other and, chatting, chirping around a little bit. And, South Carolina made some good plays. Florida made some key pitches and good plays. And it did get a little chippy on Friday. And I think that carried over into Saturday and kind of fired the Gamecocks up. And then they out-homered them Saturday and Sunday and ended up sweeping the series. But I thought it was a good series for South Carolina, and I thought it was a tough series for the Gators this weekend.
Well, you mentioned Judd Fabian as the SEC Player of the Year. Not just that, I think a lot of people thought he might be the National Player of the Year, but he struck out 40 times in 96 at-bats. That's just something that's – when a guy is struggling to make contact that much, you have to wonder how much it turns around. But – this is not the day that we do the forward-looking podcasts for the most part, but I got to say with the Gators, okay, the next 2 weekends they've got Ole Miss and Gainesville, and then they go to Knoxville. For a team that is looking to compete for an SEC title and anything short of that would be a disappointment, they've got to get it right quickly against 2 pretty elite teams.
Yeah, they really do. Ole Miss, the only undefeated team in the league, and they have them coming to Gainesville this week. And then Tennessee, I mean, raise your hand if you thought Tennessee, after 2 weeks of the SEC play, would be 5-1 in the SEC and have the most wins of any team in the conference with 21. Okay, I didn't see anybody raise their hands. Mine are like I'm sitting on mine because there was no way I would have raised my hand on that because I didn't think so. But yeah, they've got a really tough stretch the next 2 weeks with Ole Miss and Tennessee. I mean, they won 41 combined games, and they're 11-1 combined in the SEC. And of course, now we said 2 weeks ago that we thought Texas A&M, or I said it. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I thought Texas A&M would beat Florida because I didn't think they were playing very well. And then lo and behold, they sweep A&M. I would be shocked if they swept Ole Miss. And I might be shocked right now if they even won the series with Ole Miss, but they've got to get something going. They got to get Fabian going somehow in the lineup, but just the strikeouts, you're okay if the guy's 0 for 13 and he's lined out 9 times. You go, well, one of these days, those atoms are going to fall in. But when you're 0 for 13 and you punched out 11 times and you're chasing balls out of the zone, I mean, they're throwing him eyeball fastballs, chin high fastballs, and he's swinging. I mean, he's totally guessing, and they know. I mean, they know how to get him out, and he's totally guessing, and it's a struggle for him at the plate. And it'll turn around for him because he's too good a hitter. It'll turn around, but yeah, he has really struggled at the plate for them, and I think that's part of their issues, that they don't have their big guy in the lineup driving in a bunch of runs.
Well, you talked about not expecting it for Tennessee. I think we said this before the season. This was going to be the hardest season to judge because we just didn't have a body of work with these guys, right? I mean, the season didn't even get to conference play last year, so we're all guessing based on a limited sample size. But Tennessee, my goodness, like you said, 21-4. LSU, I don't know when the last time Tennessee took a series from LSU, much less swept it, but it's been a while. Now, the Vols did win a 1-run game or 2 1-run games and a 2-run game. But the question I had questions about Tennessee on both sides of the ball. And I think that the pitching has turned out to really be a pleasant surprise. They've lost Jackson Leith, but they're still getting great performances from other guys. And this is just a team that seems to piece it together from a lot of guys. Seems like every night it's a different guy with the clutch hit in the 8th or the 9th or a walk-off home run or something. This is just really a team effort in Knoxville right now.
Yeah, it really is. Pitching-wise, Tidwell has been really good. Dallas has been really good. Heflin has pitched well. Sean Hunley has really gotten it done. How about 2 wins and a save against LSU last weekend for Sean Hunley out of the bullpen? Pitching really well. They don't look for their guys to go 7, 8, 9 innings. They can, but they've got a lot of depth in their pen. And then up and down the order for them. I mean, their 9-hole hitter Saturday night, Evan Russell, bangs three balls out of the park and ties the Tennessee single game record as the 9-hole hitter. And Rucker's been good. Lipsius has been really good. Gilbert has been really good. Liam Spence is a dynamic leadoff hitter for them. And it's been somebody different every night, every day for them. And they've played extremely well. They're 5-1 in the league for the first time since 2001. They've only swept LSU twice. The other time was 2008. And and they're coming to Alabama this weekend playing a team that's 1-5 and lost 6 games in a row without some key pieces to their puzzle. And, you could look up next week and they're 8-1 for the first time since 2001, which would be their best start ever. I mean, they very easily could come to Tuscaloosa this weekend and easily win that series with Alabama. But the Vols are good. They've played really well. And Tony Vitello's done a really good job in a couple of years that he's been there. And, they were kind of another one of those teams like Alabama. Well, okay, your record's really nice, but let's see what you do in the SEC. And they've played Georgia and LSU, and they're 5-1, and I'm a believer.
Well, and here's another thing to add for the Vols. You look in conference play, some of their best hitters like Connor Pavoloni, Jordan Beck, Max Ferguson are not hitting in SEC play, and yet they're winning games because of what you said. And Evan Russell pops up and has a big night. So I think there's that too. And boy, 2 wins and a save in a weekend, that's not something you see almost ever. So shout out to Sean Hunley for that, as you said. But let's talk about LSU, because I did the calculation. It's on our website. You've got Landon Marceau has got an ERA, I think it's 0.32 or something like that. And the rest of the team is close to 5. In a league where you've got to have pitching, I just don't think LSU's got it to bust in the top tier. Now, maybe I'm wrong. You've got a talent like Jaden Hill who can get it right at any moment. And if he does, that changes things. But even then, the bullpen is struggles that we've talked about. I just don't know that LSU, and I think the Tigers have had some hard luck, right? I don't think they're a bad team. I'm not suggesting they are not a regional team, but I don't think it's a team that is going to maybe bust into that title contention like some thought could happen before the year.
Yeah, I agree. their pitching has been a real issue. Marceau has been really good. Labus has been pretty good, and Hill has been up and down. And they've had some injuries. It's they didn't have Cade Doty for the series that they lost to Oral Roberts, their leading home run guy. He's not in the lineup that weekend. And that's also the weekend that Jaden Hill decides to give up 8 in the first. And the bullpen just got crushed all weekend long with there. But LSU's had kind of a tough go of it. I mean, Mississippi State at Tennessee. And, oh, by the way, Kumar Rocker's pitching against you the next time you step on the field. And then Jack Leiter, and they got Vanderbilt this weekend. So, LSU has, struggled. They've lost their first 2 series for the first time since 16. And if they don't win the series with Vanderbilt this weekend, they'll be 0-3 in SEC series for the first time since 06 when they didn't make the tournament. Or I think they did finally come back and make it and get in as the last seed in the tournament. But not a good look for LSU right now, just by the way they've played and by the way the bullpen has pitched and the way they've pitched. And they're you can see it on Twitter, you can see it on Facebook. They ain't happy in Baton Rouge right now. There are a lot of angry folks. And I know Paul Maneri and Alan Dunn and those guys are doing the best they can and trying to get this thing together. And they played, they could have won 2 games in Knoxville this weekend. They lose 2 walk-offs on Sunday. Hard to beat on a walk-off, but certainly hard to lose 2 walk-offs in one day. Doesn't do a lot for your confidence. But, I know they're trying to, they're doing the best they can, but, this league is not forgiving, and sometimes the best you can is not good enough.
Well, we've gotten this far, and we haven't even talked about the one unbeaten team in league play. That is Ole Miss, which has swept Auburn and Alabama. And the reason we haven't talked about it, frankly, is because Auburn and Alabama probably in that bottom 4 of the league. Certainly Auburn would be. I think Alabama's had some tough luck and has got a chance to get better. But with Auburn, it's getting harder to see a path. But in any case, it's what Ole Miss needed to do. We talked about how they had the toughest schedule in the league. They've played their 2 easiest series of the year right now already, and I think the next 8 all could be against regional teams, I would say. But Ole Miss has taken care of business right now and is alone at the top of the standings at 6-0. So shout out to the Rebels for doing work the first 2 weekends.
Yeah, they've done it up and down the lineup, mixture of guys. And they've done it, without their best pitcher, Nikhazy, for 2 weeks. I mean, Doug Nikhazy missed 2 starts. Their Sunday guy, Derek Diamond's had a couple of rough outings. Gunnar Hoagland's kind of held that down for them as their number 2 guy who moved into the 1 spot when Nikhazy was out. And their bullpen's been really good. Broadway's got 6 saves. He saved 2 of the 3 games against Alabama this weekend. Peyton Schottenjay, the leadoff hitter who's missed some time with a shoulder injury. He had a huge game Friday against Alabama in the opener, had 4 hits, including a game-tying 2-run homer in the 9th to spark their offense, and then brings up their middle of their order, who going into the 9th inning was 0 for 12 with 4 strikeouts. And what do? They go 3 for 3 in the 9th inning and spark an 8-run rally, and they end up winning the game. And then they get a shutout from Nikhazy in the second game. And then Tim Elko goes wild on Sunday with the Saturday game, the finale, 4 hits and 5 RBI, including a bases clearing double and a 2-run homer. And this is an Ole Miss team that knows how to win. We talked about, Florida can't win the close games. Tennessee is 4. We mentioned Tennessee. They're 4-1 in 1-run games, 5-0 in extra innings. But Ole Miss is 7-1 in 1-run games this year, leads the league in that. And they have not played an extra inning game, but 7 1-run wins. They find a way to win, and their lineup allows them to do that with Graham and Elko and Schottenjay and Dunhurst, who hit 2 home runs in the Alabama series, and a good deep bullpen. So they've played really well. Their best start since 1964. I know Ole Miss said it was 69, but it's actually 1964. The Tennessee game in 69 was a non-SEC game, so that didn't count. So they're 6-0 for the first time since 64, when they started 11-0 and ended up being 11-1 in the league. So, Ole Miss had their first sweep over Alabama since 72 in Tuscaloosa. So it was kind of a turn back the clock weekend for Ole Miss, and they're doing some things they haven't done in Oxford in quite a while. And they've had some really, really, really good teams under Mike Bianco. But to be 6-0 in this league and going to Florida, that's quite an accomplishment.
Let's stay in the state of Alabama. We talked about Auburn really needed a get-right weekend against Kentucky. That didn't happen. Kentucky sweeps Auburn in Plainsman Park this weekend. I still don't know what to think of the Wildcats because, again, the schedule has not been tough. And I know Auburn's struggling. We've talked about the pitching struggles. But still, to go on the road and sweep anybody in the league is a good weekend. I think we've got a lot of questions about Auburn and the pitching. I don't think at this point both of us are convinced. I think the path to a regional for the Tigers is tough. But, man, what about the Wildcats? That a team that's 17-4. Yeah, Kentucky goes to Mississippi State this weekend, so that's going to be tough. And then LSU at home. That's going to be a really interesting series to see how both teams handle that. But really impressed with what Kentucky has done so far. Want to see what they do against tougher competition. But the Wildcats have taken care of business against what's in front of them so far.
They have, and they've played really well. They never trailed in the series at Auburn, which I thought was amazing. Go on the road and play an extra inning game Friday night. They did lose. They didn't lose the lead. Well, I guess they did lose the lead. It got tied, but they didn't trail, and then end up winning the game in extra innings. TJ Collette had a big weekend for them at the plate. He carries them on offense. They're the third best offensive team in the league, hitting .298, and they're the third best pitching team in the league with a 3.0 ERA. Behind Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. So two really good pitching staffs going to get together in Starkville this weekend. 34 wins combined, 11 combined saves. They struck out 539 batters, the two pitching staffs has. So we'll see how that works in Starkville. I can't imagine Mississippi State would drop a second straight home series in league play. But Kentucky with a little challenge this week after going to Auburn, getting their first SEC road sweep since 2017. And oddly enough, sweeping Auburn in Auburn for the first time since 1992, which was really crazy. I can't believe it had been that long since they had been there. But the Cats have played well and have pitched well, and they ventured out of the state of Kentucky last weekend for the first time, and they passed that test. We'll see if they can do the same, this weekend when they go to Starkville, which will be a little more difficult environment because now Mississippi State's going to expand the stadium even more this weekend. They're going to open it up more for more general admission seats. I think they had 6,000 last weekend. I think they could get more than that in there the next few weekends as they begin to open up their stadium a little bit more.
Texas A&M takes 2 at home from Georgia. That was a series we were both interested to watch because I think we felt it would be competitive, and it was. Two teams that are probably more pitching heavy than offense, although A&M scored a lot of runs against weak competition, so I don't know what to make of that. But what were your takeaways from the Bulldogs and the Aggies?
Well, it was a much-needed win for the Aggies after being swept at Florida and opening with now 3 straight weekends against Eastern Division teams. I mean, their hardest deal is, they played Florida to start, then Georgia at home, and then they go to Missouri this weekend. They got to make hay with Georgia and Missouri because they still haven't played an SEC Western Division team. And that to me is the hardest thing. Now, their next 2 weekends are Alabama at home and at Arkansas, and then they have Tennessee, and then their last 4 series are within the West. But 3 straight weekends against the East, and you got to be better than 3-6, 4-5. And I think they can sweep Missouri. It might be hard in Columbia to get that, but if they don't sweep Missouri, they're 4-5 against the East with six of their last 7 series against the West. Might be a little tough for the Aggies to get to that 500 mark and make a serious run at a regional bid as well. So it's a critical series for A&M this weekend, going on the road to Missouri. And I think except Thursday's game with Vanderbilt was not very competitive, and of course, it's not competitive Friday. It's a close game, but it's not competitive because they can't get a hit. But I thought the last game against Vanderbilt, Missouri was very competitive in that game, actually led early. And I thought Missouri, the opening weekend had a chance maybe to win a couple at Kentucky and got the last one. So not going to be an easy weekend for A&M at Missouri, but one that they have to win too, and 3 would be nice to get them over that 500 mark in the league, and 3 with 3 SEC East series behind them.
Yeah, of course, the thing everybody was watching that series, Jack Leiter takes a no-hitter through the 7th. I think he was at 101 pitches or something like that. Vanderbilt took him out, which I think was the right call. Commodores had a no-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th, and that got upset, and Vanderbilt ended up giving up 3 runs in that one. But Leiter, my goodness, 35 innings, 7 hits, none of them for extra bases. We've seen some elite pitching in this league at times, but I don't know that I've seen better than Jack Leiter.
No, not in a 6-week, 2-week, 20-inning stretch or whatever. No, I don't think so. I mean, he's dialed in. He's really good. I mean, 16 consecutive scoreless innings, and I understood him taking him out. And it's a long season. I mean, they got to have him in Omaha, and they got to have him in the Super Regionals, and a 9-inning no-hitter at Missouri on 125 pitches on a chilly Friday night doesn't really do a lot for him. And and I know Tim and Scott Brown try to, they're looking out for his best interest. And, they almost got the no-hitter anyway. In the bullpen, gave up the little base hit with 2 outs in the 9th inning. But he's been super special, super phenomenal. Strikeouts. If somehow he could just get that pitch count down a little bit. But that's hard when you're a strikeout guy because the pitch counts are going to go up. I mean, even Tim Corbin said, when you're a strikeout guy, pitches are like dog years. They seem to mount up and they just pile up. And but what a phenomenal night. I just learned this the other day. This probably has nothing to do with SEC baseball or podcast, but one base hit Friday night for Missouri of being no hit. That would have been the second no hitter in the town of Columbia, Missouri on Friday, because the Columbia, Missouri NAIA team threw a no hitter that day. In NAIA ball, and there would have been 2 no-hitters in the same city on the same day Friday, but A&M Vanderbilt just missed out on having a no-hitter against Missouri. So I thought it was kind of interesting with no-hitters and stuff. It seemed to be a lot of those going on now with, Leiter had 1, Mississippi State's had 1. We've now had 7 no-hitters in Division I baseball this year. Seems to be a high number of those going into the, 3rd weekend of league play.
Has any SEC team ever thrown back-to-back no-hitters?
Not that I'm aware of. I went back to the Vanderbilt's media guide, and in 1971, they listed 3 no-hitters that season. 2 of them against Louisville, which were back-to-back games. But then the SEC media guide says that the same pitcher threw no-hitters against Belmont and Louisville, but it didn't have the dates on there. And it didn't look right in the Vandy book because they only played Belmont right before they played Louisville. And it would have been kind of hard for me to think that he would have thrown a no-hitter like on Wednesday and then a no-hitter on Friday. So it must have been 2 different pitchers that did it. But Vanderbilt had 3 no-hitters in 71, according to their record book. And they 2 against Louisville and 1 against Calvin. I'm not exactly sure who he is, but he didn't get a hit against Vanderbilt that day. And it said in that book.
Neither did Hobbs.
Yeah, I don't think he got much help from Hobbs that day at all. But it was 3 no-hitters for Vanderbilt that year. And they're just the double no-hitters for teams are really, really hard to come by. And, I don't recall ever seeing that in the SEC, in the years that I've been doing this. And some teams, don't have that in their media guides. They don't have records of when they were last no-hit and things, and it makes it kind of hard to figure all that out. But Jeff Muir, who used to be at Tennessee and Arkansas and one of the official scorers for the SEC baseball tournament, he and I have been friends for a long, long time, and we kind of chat back and forth, text back and forth every night during the weekends and, trying to figure out the historical points of these things. And, he and I put together a list of the no-hitters the last time each team has been no-hit and threw a no-hitter. We feel like we probably got a pretty decent list of that. And we have I kind of keep charts during the season. That's where I have these records, these 1-run games and extra innings. And I have a listing of all the walk-off wins by all the teams and all the grand slams and leadoff homers. So it's easy to kind of track those down if you keep those, day by day. But it's been pretty incredible start for Vanderbilt with Leiter having 16 innings of no-hit baseball and, see what he does against LSU this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know that Roy Hobbs could hit Jack Leiter right now.
I'm not sure anybody can. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for LSU. I mean, they're a good hitting team. It'd be a challenge for them. I mean, eventually he's going to give up a hit. Eventually he's going to give up a run. What did the SEC Network telecast Sunday, they put a side-by-side graphic up of Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter, and Kyle Peterson laughed and joked. He goes, if you add their ERAs together, it doesn't get to 1. He goes, when you can add ERAs and it's not a run, he goes, it's really, really going to be hard to beat that team, like in any game. And so it's really funny when you can look at that and you add Rocker's ERA to Leiter's ERA, and it is still not 1.00. That's some pretty incredible stuff, especially 12 starts into the year. I mean, we're not talking like one weekend against Abilene Christian. We're talking 12 starts, 4 SEC starts, and these guys are 12-0 with an ERA of, under 0.5 each. I mean, that's just crazy.
Well, and I think we look at earned runs often, which we should, but sometimes you see in college baseball, somebody will give up 6, 7 unearned runs because there was an error in there, and then the pitcher gets blasted, right? I think sometimes that's a little bit misleading. These guys have given up 4 earned runs, but just 7 runs, period, in 73 innings. And so it's just incredible. Like we've said from start to finish, if you're going to take a series from Vanderbilt, you've got to either get Rocker or Leiter, and then you've got to win the Sunday game. And when you just look at it like that, it's a real challenge to get a series winning against these guys. And look, somebody's going to do it, right? This league is too good. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if LSU did it this weekend. I just think that the Tigers are due for a couple, and Vanderbilt, like any team, you're always going to have a cooling off period, and maybe that's this weekend. But right now, you just look at that to start the weekend, and it's a daunting task.
It really is. When you say 7 runs in 12 starts, I mean, that's 0.6 runs per game that Rocker and Leiter have allowed. I mean, you get a solo home run, you're going to win. 1 beats 0.6 every time. And what Leiter still hasn't allowed, obviously hasn't because he hadn't given up a hit in 2 weeks. He hadn't allowed an extra base hit all season long. They're all singles. And that makes it really tough. You're not going to get 3 or 4 singles in an inning off Jack Leiter. I mean, you're going to have to get a guy on base, and then somebody's going to have to run into one, hit it out of the park, and get 2 or 3. And maybe LSU's that team. Maybe Doty and Cruz and Gavin Dugas, maybe those are the guys that can do that. And Vanderbilt's going to have a weekend where it just doesn't work. I mean, it's just, hey, we didn't pitch good. We didn't play good. We didn't hit good. It's going to happen because all these teams are really good. And they're going to have a weekend where they're off. And maybe the weekend that Leiter and Rocker are off is the weekend that the other team's off and go, well, they didn't pitch very well, but we won 5-3 or we won 7-4. And we got away with it because our offense was good enough and their pitching wasn't as good, and we were still able to win. But in the course of 30 games over 10 weeks, everybody's going to have a really, really good weekend, and everybody's going to have a really, really bad weekend. And it's just those that can sustain the 10 weeks are the ones that are going to win. And it's, to me, if you've got those 3 guys on the mound and the offense that they have with, Bradfield and Dominic Keegan, and when they get Colwick back, some of these other guys, I just think it's really a daunting task for somebody to think that they're going to win a series with Vanderbilt, and they probably will, but it won't be easy.
And by the way, they gave up 1 run in Game 3 this weekend, which was a departure from previous weekends. So if they get that together, they're even tougher. All right, Barry, let's wrap this thing up. Anything with baseball we didn't get to today?
Well, we mentioned Alabama and Auburn, and their 1-11 combined start in the SEC, and it's one to, kind of their injury situation. Prelip's still out for Alabama. They also had last weekend, they did not have Antoine John and Chase Lee in their mix. They've also lost their left fielder, William Hamiter, to an oblique strain. They have some injury issues, and they did get TJ Reeves back this weekend. He had a 2-run homer in the game against Ole Miss. He's missed time with a hamstring and a broken bone in his hand. And in Auburn, trying to get their pitching staff together. Heard a podcast yesterday by Andy Burcham and Coach Butch Thompson from the Auburn Sports Network. I think Jack Owen moves into the rotation this weekend against Arkansas. He did not have a good outing against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. He did have a good bounce back outing this weekend against Kentucky. He gave up the run in the 10th inning and lost the game, but he's a starter. He's not a reliever. He doesn't have that swing and miss pitch in the 9th and 10th inning. I would not be shocked to see Jacko in the rotation this weekend, 3, 4, maybe 5 innings. I think they would like to get Richard Fitz back in the mix. I'm not sure he's quite ready there yet. And they were also going to talk about, since they're starting a day early this weekend, if Greenhill could go Thursday or if they might wait and run him out there on Friday. And I'll throw this out just because I've been trying to battle this for years, but it's, for some of us, it's Easter weekend and playing on Easter Sunday. A lot of teams, people go, why do you do that? The SEC softball plays Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Baseball, unfortunately, plays Friday, Saturday, Sunday, unless the two teams get together and make an arrangement to move the series to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And if both teams do not agree, then the series has to stay Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And you can look at the schedule and obviously tell that Georgia and South Carolina and Tennessee and Alabama could not come to an agreeable forecast for their series. So they'll be playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the other 5 series will all be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to avoid playing this particular Sunday. So that's how that works out when you look at it. It can be changed. I don't know why it's not league-wide anyway, but it can be changed. But apparently those 4 teams couldn't get together and decide to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So there'll be 2 games on Sunday, and Alabama and Tennessee will play at 11 a.m. on the SEC network. So that'll be the game for this weekend. But a lot of good action this weekend. We'll touch on that the next time we get together.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wish the league would make that a policy. That's the most important religious holiday for a lot of us and a lot of our audience too. And hopefully you will see some movement on that. But I'm glad we won't see too much Easter baseball. Fortunately, several teams have made the decision to switch. Barry, we will be back probably on Thursday with you again to talk some more baseball, to preview the weekend. But thank you for joining us. Thanks to Blake for joining us too. We'll be back on Wednesday with another episode of The 14. Remember to subscribe where you get your podcasts. Remember to check our website out at southeastern14.com. Anyway, for Barry Allen and Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee, host of The 14. We will see you again on Wednesday.